The email came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing tactical communications systems at Forward Operating Base Lightning in Afghanistan. The subject line read, "Car situation, don't worry about it." My stomach dropped even before I opened it. "Elena, I hope you're staying safe over there. I wanted to let you know that I sold your Honda last week. Before you get upset, hear me out. You don't need it overseas, and honestly it was just sitting in the driveway collecting dust and taking up space. The battery died twice and your father had to keep jumping it. The timing worked out perfectly because Sophia's wedding costs have gotten completely out of hand. The venue wants another $8,000 upfront, and the catering company increased their prices. I used the car money to cover the difference." Sophia was so relieved. You know how stressed she's been about the wedding planning. Dad agrees this was the sensible thing to do. We can help you find something used when you get back next year. Maybe something more practical this time. Love, Mom. Sophia says thank you. She knows you would have wanted to help with the wedding if you could. I read the email 3 times, sitting in my cramped quarters at 3 a.m. Afghan time, before the full reality sank in. Mom had sold my car, the 2019 Honda Civic I'd saved for 2 years to buy, the first new car I'd ever owned, to pay for my sister's wedding. Without asking. Without even telling me until after the fact. The most infuriating part was the casual assumption that I'd be fine with it, that my property was somehow available for family use whenever they decided it was convenient. The idea that I wouldn't have minded helping with wedding costs when no one had even asked if I wanted to contribute. I was a communications specialist with the Army, deployed for my second tour in Afghanistan. What my family didn't understand, what I'd deliberately kept vague in my letters and calls home, was that my role involved much more than maintaining radio equipment. I'd been recruited into a specialized program 3 years earlier, working with advanced satellite communications and encrypted data systems. The work had led to additional training in cybersecurity and digital intelligence. During my first deployment, I'd helped design communication protocols that were now being used throughout the theater. The skills I'd developed had attracted attention from private defense contractors, and 6 months ago, I'd quietly started a consulting business, Martinez Defense Solutions. Working within military regulations, I was providing cybersecurity assessments and communication system design to defense contractors during my off hours. It was challenging work that required security clearances my family didn't even know I possessed. It was also extremely well-compensated work. In the 6 months since starting MDS, I'd earned more than my parents made combined in a year. I'd been carefully saving and investing the money, planning for my transition out of the military and into a career that would leverage everything I'd learned. I'd kept my business income private for several reasons. Military regulations required discretion about outside employment. My family had a tendency to treat any success I achieved as a family resource rather than a personal accomplishment. And honestly, I'd learned that sharing financial information with my parents usually led to requests for loans or help that never got repaid. Case in point, my car was now helping to fund Sophia's elaborate wedding while I was serving overseas. I drafted about 15 different responses to Mom's email, ranging from hurt to furious to coldly professional. Finally, I deleted them all and wrote back. Thanks for letting me know about the car. I understand your reasoning. Elena. Short, neutral, giving nothing away. Let them think I was fine with their decision. The truth was I wasn't fine with it. But I also wasn't surprised. This was the pattern that had defined my relationship with my family for years. Sophia was the golden child who could do no wrong, whose needs and wants took priority over everything else. I was the responsible one who was expected to understand and accommodate whatever decisions the family made. When Sophia had dropped out of college twice, burning through $40,000 in tuition, Dad had shrugged it off as finding herself. When I'd enlisted to pay for my own education, they'd been disappointed that I wasn't pursuing something more feminine and traditional. When Sophia had moved back home at 26 with $15,000 in credit card debt, Mom had paid it off and called it helping family. When I'd asked to borrow $500 for car insurance during my first year of service, Dad had lectured me about financial responsibility. So selling my car to fund Sophia's wedding was just the latest example of priorities I'd never be able to change. But what they didn't know was that I'd been planning a surprise for my homecoming anyway. My contract with MDS had been so successful that I'd been invited to submit a proposal for a major Department of Defense cybersecurity initiative. If accepted, it would be worth $2.8 million over 3 years. I'd found out 2 weeks ago that my proposal had been accepted. I was coming home to more money than my family could have imagined, and I'd been planning to surprise them with some generous gifts. A vacation for my parents, help with Sophia's wedding costs, maybe even a down payment on a house for myself. Now I was reconsidering those plans. Over the next few months, I threw myself into my work with even more intensity. The DoD contract was challenging and rewarding, requiring me to develop security protocols for next-generation military communication systems. I was working with some of the brightest minds in defense technology, and the intellectual stimulation was incredible. I also started planning my transition back to civilian life. With the MDS income, I could afford to be selective about my next steps. I'd been accepted to Stanford's graduate program in cybersecurity, with classes starting 6 months after my deployment ended. I'd also received offers from 3 major tech companies and 2 defense contractors. My financial advisor helped me purchase a house in Palo Alto, near Stanford's campus. It was a beautiful 4-bedroom place with a view of the mountains, and I planned to live there during graduate school and potentially beyond. I also made another purchase, one that would serve a specific purpose when I returned home. Throughout my deployment, Mom's emails continued with updates about wedding planning. The costs kept climbing: flowers, photography, catering, music, decorations. Each email contained subtle hints about additional financial pressures, usually followed by expressions of gratitude that they'd had Elena's car money to help cover unexpected expenses. Sophia's emails were worse. She wrote about how grateful she was that I'd contributed to her wedding, as if selling my car had been a generous gift rather than something done without my knowledge or consent. Elena, I know you wanted to help with the wedding costs, and using your car money was such a thoughtful way to contribute even while you're overseas. I'm going to make sure you get the best seat at the reception. You're such an amazing sister. I showed that email to my bunkmate Sergeant Rodriguez, who just shook her head. That's some premium-grade family dysfunction right there, she said. They sold your car and convinced themselves you should be grateful for the opportunity to contribute? Pretty much. What are you going to do when you get back? I smiled. I'm going to give them the opportunity to practice what they preach about: family generosity. My deployment ended on a Thursday in March. I'd arranged for a week of leave before reporting to my next assignment, which would be transitioning out of active duty and beginning terminal leave. I didn't tell my family exactly when I was flying back. Mom had offered to pick me up at the airport, but I told her I needed to handle some military paperwork first and would make my own way home. The truth was, I wanted to see their faces when I arrived. I landed at Denver International Airport on Thursday evening and took a taxi to the car dealership where my surprise was waiting. 6 months earlier, I'd arranged to purchase a 2023 BMW M4 Competition, a $75,000 sports car that represented everything my family thought was beyond my reach. It was sleek, powerful, and completely impractical for someone they still thought of as a struggling soldier who needed help with car insurance. I'd had it delivered to a dealership near the airport specifically for this moment. The dealership manager, Mr. Thompson, greeted me personally. Ms. Martinez, welcome back from your deployment. Your M4 is ready for pickup. He led me to the showroom where the car was displayed under spotlights. Alpine white with black interior, carbon fiber accents, and every performance option BMW offered. It was absolutely gorgeous. All the paperwork is complete, he said, handing me the keys. Insurance is active, registration is current. You're ready to drive off the lot. I signed the final documents and slid behind the wheel. The engine started with a satisfying growl that announced its presence to anyone within 100 yards. 20 minutes later, I pulled into my parents' driveway. Mom must have heard the engine because she appeared at the front door immediately, followed by Dad and Sophia. They all stood on the porch, staring at the BMW like they were hallucinating. I turned off the engine and got out slowly, giving them time to process what they were seeing. Elena. Mom called out, but her voice was uncertain. You're home. I walked up to the porch where they were still standing frozen. Surprise, I said simply. That car. Dad said slowly. Is that yours? Yes. But, how? Sophia asked. I mean, where did you get the money for something like that? I bought it. Mom found her voice. Elena, sweetheart, please tell me you didn't do something financially irresponsible. Those cars cost. I mean, the payments alone. I paid cash, I said calmly. All three of them stared at me. Cash. Dad repeated. Yes. No payments, no financing. I bought it outright. Mom looked confused and concerned. Elena, where did you get that kind of money? Did you take out some kind of military loan? No loans, Mom. I earned it. How? Sophia asked, and for the first time, her voice carried a note of something that might have been respect. The same way you earn money for your wedding. I worked for it. I walked past them into the house, leaving them on the porch to stare at the BMW. Inside, everything looked exactly the same as when I'd left for deployment. Family photos on the mantle, Mom's knitting basket by her chair, Dad's collection of golf magazines on the coffee table. The only difference was the absence of my car keys from the hook by the garage door. They followed me inside, clearly struggling to process what had just happened. Elena, Mom said carefully, we need to talk about this car situation. What about it? Well, it's very expensive. And after we had to sell your Honda. You didn't have to sell my Honda, Mom. You chose to sell my Honda. But the wedding costs were Sophia's responsibility to manage. Sophia stepped forward. Elena, I'm grateful for your contribution to the wedding. The car money really helped. Stop, I said quietly. Let's be clear about what happened. You didn't ask for my contribution. You took my property and used it for your purposes. Those are very different things. Dad tried to mediate. Elena, we understand you might be upset about the car, but family is about helping each other. You're right, Dad. Family is about helping each other. So I'm curious, when exactly were you planning to help me replace the car you sold? Well, we thought, when you got back we could help you find something used. Something used. Something cheaper. Something more appropriate for someone you think can't afford anything better. Mom looked hurt. That's not what we meant. Isn't it? You sold my car because you assumed I couldn't afford to object. You used the money for Sophia's wedding because you assumed I'd be honored to contribute. You never asked what I wanted because you assumed you knew what I could afford. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water while they exchanged glances. Elena, Sophia said slowly, how much money do you actually have? Enough to buy a $75,000 car with cash and not worry about it. But your military salary covers my basic expenses. The BMW was purchased with income from my consulting business. Consulting business? Dad asked. Martinez Defense Solutions. I provide cybersecurity consulting to defense contractors. It's been quite successful. Mom sat down heavily. How successful? Successful enough that I've been accepted to Stanford's graduate program with full funding. Successful enough that I've purchased a house in Palo Alto. Successful enough that I have more in savings than most people see in several years. The room was completely quiet. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked finally. Because every time I've shared good news with this family, it's been turned into an obligation. When I got promoted, Dad asked if I could help with the mortgage. When I got my security clearance, Mom asked if I could use my connections to help Sophia get a government job. When I mentioned my consulting work, you asked if I could get family discounts for your friends. I finished my water and set the glass in the sink. So I stopped sharing. I let you assume I was struggling financially because it was easier than dealing with constant requests for money and favors. But if we'd known, Sophia began. If you'd known what? That you didn't need to sell my car to pay for your wedding? That you could have asked me directly for help instead of taking my property? That you were treating someone with significant financial resources like a charity case. Dad looked uncomfortable. We made assumptions. You made assumptions based on what served your purposes. You wanted to use my car money for Sophia's wedding, so you convinced yourselves that I didn't need the car and would be happy to contribute. I moved toward the stairs to go to my old room. Where are you going? Mom asked. I'm staying at a hotel tonight, then driving to California tomorrow. California? But you just got back. I have a house there. And a graduate program starting soon. And a business to run. When will we see you again? Sophia asked, and for the first time she sounded genuinely concerned. I paused at the bottom of the stairs. I don't know. When you're ready to treat me like an adult whose property and decisions deserve respect instead of like a resource you can use whenever it's convenient. Elena, Dad said, we love you. We're proud of you. We didn't understand. You didn't understand because you didn't ask. You made assumptions and decisions based on those assumptions without ever considering that you might be wrong. I went upstairs and packed my few remaining belongings. When I came back down, they were all sitting in the living room, clearly having had some kind of family conference. Elena, Mom said, we owe you an apology. For what specifically? For selling your car without permission. For using the money without asking. For treating you like we knew what was best for you instead of respecting your autonomy. It was a better apology than I'd expected. And for assuming you needed our help instead of recognizing that you've been incredibly successful on your own, Sophia added. I'm sorry for taking credit for your contribution to my wedding when you never actually agreed to contribute. Dad nodded. We're sorry for treating you like the family member who needed managing instead of recognizing that you've become the most successful person in this room. I looked at each of them, seeing genuine remorse in their faces. Thank you for the apology. It means something. Is there a way to make this right? Mom asked. You can start by respecting my choices going forward. You can stop assuming you know what's best for me. And you can understand that my success doesn't make me a family ATM any more than my apparent lack of success made me a source of free resources. What about the car money? Sophia asked quietly. Keep it. Consider it a wedding gift. But understand that it's a gift I'm choosing to give retroactively, not something you were entitled to take. As I walked toward the door, Dad called after me. Elena, are you really not going to visit anymore? I turned back to look at my family, these people who had raised me and loved me and completely misunderstood me for years. I'll visit when you're ready to see me as I actually am instead of as who you think I should be. I walked out to the BMW, which gleamed in the driveway like a beautiful, expensive middle finger to every assumption they'd made about my life. As I drove away, I could see them standing at the window watching the taillights disappear into the night. My phone started ringing before I'd reached the end of the street. I let it go to voicemail. 6 months later, I was settled into my graduate program at Stanford and running MDS from my home office. The business had grown to 8 employees and $12 million in annual revenue. I'd also been approached by 3 venture capital firms interested in funding expansion into commercial cybersecurity. I got a call from Sophia. Elena, I wanted to let you know that I've started paying back the car money. What? I've been putting aside $500 a month since the wedding. I know you said to consider it a gift, but it didn't feel right keeping money that wasn't freely given. I was quiet for a moment, surprised by this development. Sophia, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I need to. Because you were right, taking your property and calling it a contribution was wrong, even if we convinced ourselves it was okay at the time. How are Mom and Dad handling this? They're learning. Dad's been asking a lot of questions about business and entrepreneurship. Mom's been reading articles about supporting adult children without being controlling. They're trying to understand how they got things so wrong. It was a start. And you? I'm learning too. I'm learning that being the favorite doesn't mean being entitled to other people's resources. I'm learning that family support should go both ways. And I'm learning that my little sister has become someone pretty amazing. 6 months after that, I drove the BMW back to Denver for Christmas. This time when I pulled into the driveway, no one seemed surprised by the car. Instead, Mom hugged me and said, "We're so proud of everything you've accomplished." And for the first time in years, I believed she meant it.